think we can start. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Dagan. Thank you for being with us today. Professor Porat, a good friend of the delegation, colleagues, Shuli Davidovich, the diplomatic advisor of President Rivlin, who's with us today, and everyone who's listening to this event through our Facebook page. It is my honor to open this event to mark Yom HaShoah, Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day, with our special guest, Batsheva Dagan, a survivor of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Professor Dina Porat, head of the Kantor Centre for the Study of Contemporary European Jewry at Tel-Aviv University. We are all honored here to focus on the Holocaust and have a chance to talk with a survivor. A person who lived the horrors of the Holocaust and is here to share a personal story and to convey to us as living testimony the atrocity carried out by the Nazis. Unfortunately, every year that passes, fewer survivors of the Shoah remain, and it is our obligation to remember their stories and find a new way to pass their testimonies. Teaching the lessons of the Holocaust can help bolster our societies against anti-Semitism, hatred, and discrimination. Yesterday we remember the millions of victims, Jewish men, women, and children, who were murdered by the Nazi and their collaborators. This year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a worrying rise in Holocaust distortion and denial. Outright Holocaust denial is ostracized and in Europe is even illegal. Distorting the Holocaust by making false comparison, by accusing the Jews or Israel of profiting from the Holocaust, or suggesting that the Jews brought the Shoah upon themselves are much more common allegations. And research shows that only a third of Europeans know just a little about the Holocaust, and 1 in 20 has never heard about the Holocaust. This is alarming. Teaching the facts of the Holocaust will help to immunize our society against distortion and racism. In response to this way of Holocaust distortion and denial, the European Commission launched, in cooperation with the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, UNESCO, and the United Nations, a year-long campaign entitled Protect the Facts, to raise awareness and develop knowledge about Holocaust distortion. We know that by far the most prevalent manifestation of anti-Semitism can be found online, blurring the borders between the virtual and the real. Persistent action have been taken by the European Union to tackle illegal online hate speech, and in 2016 the European Commission signed a code of conduct on countering hate speech online with major IT companies. The European Commission is currently assessing how to address illegal hate speech online in the context of the Digital Services Act as part of a comprehensive approach towards all forms of illegal content online. The Digital Services Act will ensure greater transparency on how platforms moderate content, increase accountability, procedures for removing illegal content, and redress mechanisms. Anti-Semitism and racism are sadly on the rise in several of European member states. More than 3,000 recorded anti-Semitic incidents occurred across the European Union in 2019. And from the surveys, we know that this is an underreporting at the level of 70 to 80%. So these figures are only the tip of the iceberg. We're looking at the fight against anti-Semitism holistically, and in December 2020, the European Council adopted a declaration on mainstreaming the fight against anti-Semitism across policy areas. And later this year, the European Commission will present the first ever European strategy to combat anti-Semitism and foster Jewish life. Holocaust remembrance, education, and a fight against distortion will be central pillars of this strategy. We are committed to consistently back up our words with concrete action, and we, as European Union, we have tripled the budget on Holocaust remembrance, education, and research as of next year to reach 12 million euros. Before I pass the floor to Ms. Batsheva Dagan, we will now hear a video message from the European Commission Vice President, Margarita Skinas, who is responsible for the EU in the European Union to fight against anti-Semitism, who recorded the following message specifically for this event. Please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is my great honor to be able to join you today, even by means of a video message, on the occasion of Yom HaShoah, to remember the millions of Jews and the many other victims who perished in the Holocaust. The Shoah was a turning point in the history of humanity, a tragedy unlike any other. For us Europeans, remembering the Shoah is more than a historic duty. It is indispensable to uphold our values and our way of life. That of a Europe that places humanity at its center, secured by fundamental rights, democracy, and the rule of law. This past year, because of the pandemic, we had to find new forms of remembrance and new ways to teach the lessons of the Holocaust to the younger generations. Memorial sites in Europe cannot be visited. At least in Israel, thanks to the remarkable progress in the COVID-19 response, you can now have ceremonies taking place physically again. Let me take this opportunity to emphasize how important it is for the European Union to see the Israeli research and innovation community mobilized in joint efforts against this virus. This includes Israel's active participation in our research programs and the European Research Area versus Corona actions. EU-Israel cooperation thrives for the significant benefit of both sides. Europe and Israel share so much. The history of the Jewish people is the history of Europe, including its most troubled and dark chapters. Anti-Semitism, unfortunately, did not end with the Shoah. Alongside centuries-old prejudices, we are faced today with Holocaust denial and distortion, as well as Israel-related anti-Semitism. During the pandemic, we saw a significant rise of anti-Semitic speech and conspiracy theories online. Recognizing all forms of contemporary anti-Semitism has been a key aspect in the European Commission's stepped-up efforts to combat anti-Semitism, which President von der Leyen has entrusted me to lead. To this end, the definition of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance has been and continues to be a most useful tool. The Commission, together with the IHRA, issued a handbook to support the practical use of the definition in January this year. And we also joined forces with the IHRA, UNESCO, and the United Nations for an online awareness-raising campaign to debunk Holocaust distortion entitled Protect the Facts. Later this year, the Commission will propose to add hate speech and hate crime to the so-called list of Eurocrimes under the EU treaties. This will include Holocaust denial, trivialization, and condoning the Holocaust online or offline. And by the end of this year, we will also present the first ever comprehensive European strategy on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life. 3/4 of a century after the Shoah, the symbolic, political, and substantive significance of this initiative cannot be overstated. We already took important steps in that direction during the German presidency of the Council, through a declaration on mainstreaming the fight against anti-Semitism across policy areas, a declaration which was supported unanimously by all our member states. With a new strategy, we want to deliver precisely on that objective, keep the level of ambition high, and meaningfully complement our member states' efforts in developing their own national strategies and actions against anti-Semitism. To this day, half of our member states have done so, with Romania, Austria, and Italy being the latest to put forward national strategies over the last 3 months. Next to addressing anti-Semitism and ensuring Holocaust remembrance and education, fostering Jewish life in its diversity will be an important pillar in our upcoming strategy. We need to ensure that Jews feel safe and can live their cultural and religious identity openly and without fear across Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Europe is determined to win the fight against anti-Semitism. We owe it to those who were murdered during the Shoah, to those who survived, and to the future generations. And I want to assure you that in this quest, the European Union and Israel will always stand side by side. Thank you.
Now, I will give the floor to our guest, Ms. Dagan, who was born in Łódź, Poland, and survived Auschwitz-Birkenau. She's a pioneer in the field of Holocaust teaching for young children. She has written children's books, as well as a book of documentary poetry for adolescents and adults, which describes her experience during the Holocaust. In 2008, Ms. Dagan was named Women of the Year in Education by Yad Vashem for a contribution to Holocaust teaching for children. In 2012, she was honored as one of the torch lighters at the official state ceremony marking Yom HaShoah. Batsheva, we're very honored to have you here. We thank you very much for taking your time to share your experience with us, and we're really looking forward to hear from you. After you, Dina Porat will say a few words, will give us a lecture, and then we will open the floor for questions and answers and discussions. Please, Batsheva.
Well, I am very moved to meet you, and what I see you, that I can see you today is to me a privilege which was fulfilled 77 years later, at least. I wanted to speak to all the nations and to ask them, why don't they help us? Why are different countries indifferent, and we were in such a terrible condition in the camp? I was in Auschwitz 20 months. It is a lot of time if you multiply in hours and seconds. Every second was loaded with terrible anxiety. Is it my last moment now? And I was young, and I wanted to live, and I wanted to tell the world about this terrible condition we are in Auschwitz. But but no one was ready to listen because it was a German secret. I learned German in a school in Lodz in Poland, so I could understand everything which is being said by the Aufseher, how do you say it?
What? Commanders.
People who speak German will help me. Aufseher.
The guards.
Yeah.
את יכולה להגיד guards. Guards. שומרים.
Yeah. Okay. And they were very cruel, and they hated us, and they treated us as not as human beings, like animals. Well, you know, I imagine that you know about the terrible what we ate was where we slept, and all which has to do with existing. And we wanted to live, to suffer, and to tell the world. And for me, this meeting is a fulfillment of many, now 77 years.
Mm-hmm.
77 years since then till now. I have a book, Imagination, Blessed Be, Cursed Be, in English, and I have a book in German, Von hier nach dort im Strom der Zeit. This is my last book, which I published now in my town, Holon. And Chica, the dog in the ghetto, became a famous story for children and also for adults. And this is a story of a dog. To me, the dog, Chica, was a Spanish name. Chica is a symbol of a Jewish child for me. And Chica survived the terrible war, and she was even here in the surroundings in near Netanya. They lived in Netanya, and the boy is today a professor of chirurgy, and he was actually the first to go to the gas chambers because he was a child, and children were not accepted as valuable people. Only those who could work and suffer could survive. And it is a miracle that he survived, and he is here in Tel-Aviv. And this is a story about a real story, a true story of a child, of a boy who loved his dog and met the dog after the end of the war. Here in Israel, near Netanya, we are here now, and it is in these surroundings where he lived and And when I remember him standing on a road, he wanted to hitchhike, and he ran after the dog on these roads, which you can see today, the same roads. They are maybe more convenient than they were there. But today, you can trace the roads and to see how it was. Well, what can I tell you? I wanted to live. And I forced myself to be able to suffer. Only people who could suffer could survive. How could I survive? Hunger, sickness, and the everlasting threat, you will not live, you are doomed to die. And I didn't want to see going out from Auschwitz through the chimney. I have to live, to suffer, and to tell the world. And this I am doing in my books, in my meetings in different countries. I met a lot of pupils in Germany. In Ravensbrück was my second camp after Auschwitz, a very hard camp. And when I came there, the first question I asked, is there a crematorium there? And somebody points at it, there is a crematorium. And I thought that Ravensbrück has no crematorium, because in Auschwitz we had 5 crematoriums. And I was working in the unit called Canada, where we sorted out the belongings of people who were sent directly to the gas chambers. So I had in my hands blouses and trousers and different parts of clothes, which I had to sort out, and they were sent. In German you say Winterhilfswerk, to aid poor people. The good clothes we had to master 10 pieces in one pack, and we sent it to German people who had no clothes. So everything was used to the last point. You could not imagine. And how can you believe that you will survive it? It is because I was stimulated by many languages, because all Europe was there. So I said, oh, this is an occasion for me to learn a language. And I learned my French in Auschwitz. I found people from Belgium, and one lady was ready to teach me, and I followed her, comment s'appelle ça, and I created a fluent French in Auschwitz. So French is the language of hope to me. But in the meantime, so many languages came into my life history. I didn't want to stay in Europe because I swallowed so much anti-Semitism in Poland that I decided I want to live in a Jewish country. I don't want to live in Europe. And I came to this country in September 45. It was Rosh Hashanah, which is our holiday, a very important holiday. So I came in 45, 8th of September, and it was my birthday. So I came, I got a home, and I met two brothers of mine. And I was very happy that I am here and I am not in Europe. But when I think, but Polish is very deep in me, I cannot erase it. Because I went to school and I learned Polish. And every language is a tool to communicate. So I was happy that I can communicate because in Poland I could study in a high school. I could study Latin and one of the languages. And I chose German because there was a war, and I thought that this language will render a very good service to me during that time, that I could communicate with people and express myself. Maybe something which you don't know, that the hunger of culture was as big as the hunger of bread. Something to feed your brain, your heart, something which you will remember and you will tell the world. And this is what I do in my books. And I was in the beginning of my professional career, I was a kindergarten teacher. So I am one of the first who started the topic with young children. And this is a must, because we have a siren ringing, and the children ask, why is it? And we had to say so. My book was, my first book was Chica, the dog in the ghetto. This was one of my first books. And I also wrote in a children form the story of the Holocaust, so that children could, and of course with a happy end, and not with submission. Because I didn't want to take the trust of children that the world is not, doesn't consist of evil, but there is something which can feed the soul. And so my books all are with an optimistic end, because I don't want to hurt children. My books appear in several languages. I have it here in German, and It is my last book, which was, so I looked there when I came with my breath to Auschwitz, and they shaved off my hair and they tatuated my number, which is exactly today as it was. Nothing has changed, but my number is a happy number because I can see you and speak to you, which I couldn't do then. And it was a dream to me to meet you today, 77 years after. It's a miracle. I dreamt about this meeting then, and here I have it. I had to wait 77 years. I was actually with you together. We were in Belgium. Mm-hmm. And then I spoke to people in Brussels.
In Brussels, in a ceremony.
Yeah. So to me, everyone who wants to remember and is ready to come and to share the suffering is very important. I think that teaching the theme Shoah is actually a must, because new things happen in different parts of the world. Did we learn something? This is a big question. Did we learn something from the Holocaust? We should have learned. But I am not sure if the world learns, because there are so many antagonistic actions that you cannot forgive, that it comes back. And we ask, why don't we succeed in changing? And there is one key: education. If we start the education, I am one of the beginners in kindergarten. This is a theme especially for Israel and for Germany, because the topic is a part of life in Israel and also in Germany. I was now 16 years in Ravensbrück after Auschwitz, which is also a base camp with a crematorium. When I came to Ravensbrück, I asked, is there a crematorium here? It is a sign to live or to die. And I thought that there is no crematorium, but there was a crematorium.
There isn't a gas chamber there, but there is a crematorium.
Yeah. No, there was a crematorium. Okay. Yeah, yeah. You can even see the building. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you visit the place. Well, so you know, the Nazi German closed all the Jewish schools, but we studied. It was not legal, and when we saw soldiers over the window, so we hid the books and we started singing that they don't know that we are studying. So we were looking for our, for our freedom of choice. even in hell, to study. And this is what I am sharing with the youngsters, how important the school is. And they learn from it. When, if you have no school, you are not developing yourself in that time. Today there are other media, so today they can, yeah. Well, I am very happy to see you all, and I must say, I dreamt about it, and the dream waited 77 years. But it is, I will say, better later than never.
Thank you very much, Batsheva, for sharing with us these words. I think we certainly agree that forgetting is not an option. We cannot forget unless we want to forget ourselves. I give the floor now to Dina Porat for her remarks.
Okay. I couldn't hear.
First of all, I'd like to thank the ambassador, the organizers, Yael and Etzli, and all those who came. And first, and then, I'd like to thank deeply my friend Batsheva, and I'm very glad that I had a hand in bringing her here. She's 96. Look at that. She's 96. Okay? It's a... Look at the way she looks and speaks. Okay, so there is some hope. Yeah, thank you, Batsheva. I think I'll make it short and not long, but we agreed that I will say a few words about survivors, because we have a survivor with us, and I'll divide my words into two. First, the survivors right after the war, and then the survivors today. Because, why did we pick it up? Of course, because of Batsheva, because it's Yom HaShoah, but also because you must, being here in Israel, you must be hearing about survivors, the survivors. But there is nothing like one audience, one group that is survivors, that makes the survivors. There are many people coming from many countries, all sorts of educations, all sorts of beliefs, with one common experience, of course, the Holocaust. So let me start by trying to portray a bit the situation after the war. You know that there were 9 million Jews in Europe. The German regime decided that there were 11 because according to the Nuremberg laws, they put 2 more who did not recognize themselves as Jews, but to them they were Jews. So 9, 3 of them in the Soviet Union, 3 in Poland, and 3 all over. The Jewish people numbered before the Holocaust 16.8 million. 16.8. Today we are 14.8 million, which means that we have not yet recovered. We did not get back to the number. Those who survived, more than 1 million stayed in the Soviet Union, others in Europe. More or less, those who recognize themselves as survivors who want to go out of Europe, as Batsheva said. They didn't want to stay one more day in Europe, but they had to wait for an opportunity to go out. there were about a bit more than 500,000. Okay, and this is the number, this is the not the group, but those whom we call survivors, more than 500,000. Now, they were mainly half of them were in DP camps, displaced persons camps. Okay, mostly in Germany, but Austria, Italy. 250,000. Now, this 250,000, many of them came back from Soviet Russia. They fled from Poland or were deported there and then came back. But you also had quite a number of those who went out of hidings, who were in ghettos, who were in the forests as partisans or hiding in the forests, and in the camps that opened up in Germany with liberation. So it was a very mixed population. Most of them were between the age of 15 and 40, because the Nazis, as you have heard, killed the children and the elderly first as non-working entities. So they were mostly from 15 to 40, with some exceptions. Chief Rabbi Lau was 8 years old when he came out of Buchenwald, but that was really a unique, quite a unique case. So this is their age, this is their number. They came from all over. And what you can say about them is that in no time at all, they started recovering. They started building themselves again. They started putting up newspapers, collecting evidence, historical evidence, putting up committees that would help do that. They lost the families. Most of them lost their families and were alone in the world. And so marriages were in a matter of days. You met someone for 2 days and you married him. And then there was a baby boom of new babies. They were alone. They needed some warmth. So there were new families, many babies, a reorganization. And you know that we Jews are famous for having many opinions. So before you could turn around, there were already, again, parties, sub-parties, and deviation from parties, and newspapers that you read, and newspapers that you will never read. So, but it all came back to life. 2/3 of this came to the land of Israel, and 1/3 went mainly to the Americas. The United States wasn't readily opened. 360,000 came to the land of Israel, and 180,000, that's half of that, went mainly to the Americas, from Canada down, Australia, South Africa. Now, when they came here, they came by ships, as you know, fighting against the British, who tried to avoid coming because they didn't want troubles with the Arab world. But they did come. It was an illegal voyage, illegal ships, illegal immigration, but they came wishing, as Batsheva said, to live among Jews. It was a total disappointment of this world, a total disappointment of your neighbors, ideologies, country, total. Okay. You know that Zionism before the war was 10% of the Jewish people, that's all. 10% formally paid the shekel. Shekel was then the sign that you are registered in the Zionist world movement. Only 10% with a lot of empathy around, but 10%. After the war, it was the only ideology or the only place that gave you any hope. All the others were bankrupt, went bankrupt. Okay, so they came here despite of all this difficult voyage, and whatever way you look at it, this was a public that gave its energy, its new energy, to building the country, to fighting in 1948. Many of them said we were fighting the way we couldn't fight there. We were helpless, and now we are fighting. And they contributed a lot to the country. Before the war, there were hardly 500,000 Jews here, who also lost, most of them also lost their families. They were not survivors, they were here, but they lost their families. So they understood. And the survivors coming here contributed, built, and you have quite a number of personalities. Chief Rabbi Lau, we have said, Aharon Barak, a Supreme Court president, who was a child in the ghetto of Kovno. Speakers of the House, 2 of them were survivors. The commander of the Northern Command, Yossi Peled, was a child in Belgium, hidden as a Christian child, etc., etc. They were central, and in number, they gave a boost to the population, which was, as we said, less than 500,000. And there came 360,000. And these years came also the Jews from the Muslim countries, so that in 1951, the population of the 3-year-old country doubled itself. Each Israeli absorbed 1 newcomer. That's unheard of in the history of immigration worldwide. Okay, so this is about their beginnings. And let me say that those who came then, and there were also those who came in 1956 from Romania and from Hungary. In 1956 came from Poland and from Hungary, and then from the Soviet Union when newcomers came. Among them were also survivors. So they kept coming and kept joining. Now, what do we have today? Today, we have about half a number. This year, 174 survivors are still alive. Most of them are 75 years and up, and some 15%, 90 and up, like our friend Batsheva. The number, they pass away, and many of them pass away every year, of course, a few thousands every year. But the number doesn't really go quickly down. And why is that? Because during the time, being a survivor became a respected status. And the survivors are cherished, are invited to school, they speak all over, they help build the memory of the Holocaust, of former European Jewry and North African Jewry. Why do I mention North African? Because with time, the definition of a survivor changed. And not only those 360,000 who came from Europe are considered survivors, but also those who came from North Africa, the parts that were taken by the Germans, especially in Libya, where they had concentration camps. Some were sent to Bergen-Belsen. So North Africa as well is considered, certain parts of it, survivors. So from the 174 living today, so what did they say? Sorry, so this is a sign that you are listening. Yeah. 174,000, 1/3 is from North Africa, 1/3 is from the former Soviet Union, those who came in the 70s and in the 90s, and 1/3 left from the original, those who came from Europe. So because the definition widened, then you had and still have more survivors. Okay, today I'm sure you have heard many complaints that survivors are not being taken care of enough, and I would like to address this and say that most of them are not only being taken care of, they are registered, they are being taken care of by local councils and municipalities, and units of soldiers come adopt them or come to their homes to help. There are groups of students who do that, high school students. I was member of a committee, the Arad committee, who checked the situation of the survivors. Most of those who came from Europe build themselves, they don't need help. They get it, but they don't need it. There are people who stand on their 2 feet strongly. Those who came from North Africa as well, integrated long ago. Those who recently came from the Soviet Union, a few thousand of them, are the nucleus, I would say about 8,000, this is what we found out in the committee, about 8,000 of them came here at an elderly age with no pension. The Soviets do not pay them, it's not the Soviets anymore, but Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, they don't pay for those who live. So they came actually at an elderly age with nothing. So you have to take care of them from the beginning for everything they need. Also, many of them came with children, but the children left for Canada, United States, etc., and they stayed here. Okay? So this is the part that there are complaints about not being treated well enough. But I would say that there are many efforts and many kinds of support from Germany, from the government, from national security, etc., that are dedicated to survivors, and they are a very respected group, a group that gets a lot of honor and respect, as we said, in the country. So this is more or less, and I'm sure you will have some questions.
Thank you, Dina. We open now for questions and for remarks. We should have by Zoom the European Commission Coordinator for Anti-Semitism, Katrin von Schnurbein, and her team that are following our discussions.
Oh, really?
But I'll open the floor for everyone who wants to step in with the questions to Batsheva, to Dina, or remarks. Please.
I will have a couple of comments. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your presentation and to tell you that as somebody who worked for 30 years for the Holocaust Museum in Washington, I appreciated it very much. I want to thank you, Dina. We knew each other for a century.
Yeah, yes. A century, no?
And I wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, I want to emphasize for you, ladies and gentlemen, that this lady worked in one of the toughest places in Auschwitz, because Canada Commando was more watched because of the sensitivity which was the work done there than many other places in Auschwitz. Because as you heard, they were processing the belongings of the dead and of the survivors, very few survivors, which were sent to Germany to poor family or families of people who were bombed and had nothing. Ending with spoons, ending with every little object, everything was sorted. And they were watched carefully because it was considered National Socialist property. So this is one point which I wanted to make. The other point, and correct me please if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that survivors were well treated in Israel or anywhere else at the beginning. Don't tell us now. The past is the past. It took time.
I will refer to that.
Until survivors were really honored. They were, to a certain degree, in my view as a scholar, ignored or a little bit forgotten.
Now, let me answer that. No, we know each other for a century. He has many questions. Yeah.
There is a lot yet to be discovered. One day I went to the Lavon Institute.
Okay.
And the Lavon Institute has an unknown collection of testimonies made in 1945, even before the defeat of Nazi Germany, by the World Jewish Congress in Romania, people who were already transiting toward Palestine. And these testimonies are extraordinary because they are like a raw wound, and the level of detail there is something not to be believed. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The ambassador is himself a historian too, and a researcher of the Holocaust in Romania and in general, so we know each other. I didn't say that they were respected at the beginning. I said that they are respected now.
Yes,
but and you are right in saying that at the beginning it was a problematic encounter. It was problematic because people came with stories that you couldn't believe. And as the author Aaron Appelfeld put it, after a short time, both sides decided to be silent because those who were here, they lost their families, this we know, but they weren't there. Accepting or meeting the survivors and hearing the stories about the ghetto, about Auschwitz, about the stories didn't make sense. And many of them were not believed, not because they didn't want to believe, but it was hard to understand this reality. And once the survivors understood it, they stopped talking, or they stopped talking also because to tell it again and again is to relive it again and again. And you wanted a new life, not to tell your story each day again and scratch your wounds again and again. Batsheva wears her tattooed number, and it looks like always, but many people went to Kupat Cholim, you know, our public health, and asked the tattoo to be taken off. So when you see a person with a scar, you can know that there was a number there. Okay, many people went to take the numbers off. By the way, there is today a new fashion of grandchildren of Holocaust survivors to put the number of the grandfather or mother to put on their arm as a sign of identification. But anyhow, it was a problematic encounter. In the beginning, there were also expressions of suspicion and even contempt. How did you let this happen to you? And how did you survive? May we answer, is it at the expense of someone? You're a beautiful young lady, what did you do? Etc. It was problematic. But let me say, and I think you hinted to it, no one wanted refugees after the war. No one. The refugees came with what? With a shirt. That's it. No property, sometimes no profession, many times not profession. They lost 6 years. They lost 6 years, they didn't study. They lost the high school, they lost professional training. They just came with nothing. But here, even if you treated them or felt suspicion and sometimes contempt, because we are the Israeli heroes, and who are they? They were accepted and they were treated with the meager means of a young country. They were accepted in kibbutzim, in moshavim, etc. There is a general, Chaim Erez. Chaim Erez is his name, a known general in the IDF. And he came with nothing at all, and he was put in a family in one of the earliest moshavim, Nahalal, in the Valley of Israel. And I met him years later. We did something together for Holocaust Memorial Day. And I asked him, tell me, Chaim, when you were put in this family, was it for you self-understood that they raised you, they fed you, they raised you, they sent you to school, they took care of you? You were like one of their children for years until you went to the army. And he said, yes. But it's not self-understood that you take home or that you take to your kibbutz and moshav and local council, etc., people that you don't know. But there was a feeling that you owe them, and that they have nowhere else to go. They went to the Americas. Today there are researches about how they were accepted in Canada, etc., etc. They say no one accepted us. No one was waiting for us. We just came. So it was mixed with problematic feelings, but they were accepted and treated and taken care of. And that's the main point.
There is a question from Katarina from Schnurbein.
Oh, Katarina.
We can't connect technically, so I'll just read the question. Dina, how do you see the situation of Holocaust survivors today in Europe? It's from Katarina.
Survivors in Europe?
Yes.
So, it's okay. Could you say that again? What is the situation of...
How do you see the situation of Holocaust survivors today in Europe?
Okay. Well, first of all, please send my best regards to Katarina and thank her for the great work that is being done in the EU, really, against anti-Semitism. You are doing, and she's doing a great, great job. There are not many Holocaust survivors in Europe today, because most of them left. You have, in small numbers, in Western Europe, in Belgium, Holland, France, Italy, where people did not leave but stayed after the war, and they are survivors. They didn't leave for Israel or for the Americas, because in Western Europe, relations with the population were better, also in Italy, and so some of them definitely decided to stay. And not many are alive anymore. They are all elderly people, and the problem that I see is a bit less acute than the one that exists in Germany and Austria. There are survivors in Austria and Germany too, but with very small numbers. The problem they are facing is that there is Holocaust denial, that there is today what they call in Germany and Austria Holocaust fatigue. We are tired. We are tired of Jews speaking about the Holocaust all day and night. Enough is enough. We are new generations. We are not responsible. We don't want to carry this responsibility. So for these survivors, it is difficult in recent years to hear Holocaust denial, rise of anti-Semitism, accusations such as we brought the Holocaust on ourselves, we cooperated with the Nazis, all kinds of this. It's not easy for a person who is elderly and would like to finish his life quietly in a respectful manner. It's difficult. But as I said, it's more difficult in Germany and Austria than in Western and Southern Europe. That's it.
Yeah, because first of all, let me express my respect. For me, it's always when I meet some survivor of the Holocaust, it's a very strong emotional experience for myself. We have some of Czech origin living here, about your age or slightly younger. So it's an issue that I'm following constantly, working here as ambassador. But I would have a question, maybe not an easy one. How is it possible, with all this knowledge about Holocaust, about all this historical burden that we know, because it's not only Holocaust, but centuries and centuries of anti-Semitism, what would be your explanation why there is still anti-Semitism in Europe? It's $1 million question, I know, but please try. What would be your explanation?
Well, I'll make it short, because if not, we'll have to meet in the university for a seminar. A day before Holocaust Memorial Day, every year, we, a center in Tel-Aviv University, it's a team that I had since 1992, publish a report on the situation of anti-Semitism worldwide. Okay? And I think the events of this year gave me some key for former years, to understand former years and to answer your question. This year, we summarized 2020, the Corona year, basically. Started in February and is still here in many parts of the world. It was characterized by fear and an accusation coming from many parts. Is extreme right. Iran was very diligent in spreading the accusation. The Jews and the Israelis orchestrated the virus and are spreading it. And why is that? Because with a Jewish cop, they will find the vaccination and the medicine first, and will sell it to all the ailing world, and we will be even richer than we are. Which is a horrible accusation, to say that we don't mind people dying as long as we have the money. It's a terrible accusation. And I asked myself, wow, how come it caught so quickly? It's a horrible thing. How come it caught so quickly? And why? Because I think that there is, along centuries, there have been has been an image of Jews built up from layers, religious and economic and political layers, a negative image, and with an image that is a bit mystical, that you don't fully understand. You don't understand its habits. They are closed within themselves. There is fear. And there is the real Jew that you see, but there must be another Jew with all kinds of powers that are attributed to him. Why this Jewish cop? And so there is a necessity. I think society, people need, society with fears need some answer. Need some answer and some entity to throw its fear on. And since it is going on for centuries already, it goes on. That's it.
You probably know Kissy Felix, the name of Kissy Felix. She published a book about her survival, and she was my friend at the Canada Commando, where I sorted out the things of European Jews. And Kissy had a number, and she took out the number. She didn't want to have a number. And I saw her number in a bottle of formalin. Formalin is a...
באמת? בקופת חולים?
No, in England. In England.
Okay.
And she put her number in a bottle of formalin. And when we met, I said, I don't want to take out my number. It is a part of my
life.
Yeah, of my past, and I have to keep it on and not to erase it. So she has her number in a bottle because she decided with her number. I met her in London. She is still in London, and she doesn't want to have the number because she was working in a hospital, and people asked, what is this strange number here on your hands? So she took it out, and she put it in formalin in a bottle. And I saw the number in the bottle in London. So you see reactions to the number, and the number is a part of my destiny. I cannot erase it. It is a part of my life. So you have different reactions to having a number. People who reject it and people who just want to keep it. And I have a very special number. So not because it is special, but because it is my number. It was my destiny. And I cannot erase this destiny. So I think reactions are different from one to another. You cannot expect that everyone will react the same way. Because
but she didn't throw away the bottle. The bottle is there. Yeah.
And the bottle is there. The bottle is there.
Is there.
Yeah. And I saw the bottle and the number of... She was a very lucky prisoner because she had a mother. So the two numbers of hers and her mother's are in the bottle. Yeah.
We have a question from a German chargé d'affaires, please.
Yeah, well, I'm from the German embassy. I just first wanted to underline that we're very grateful for this proof of confidence that you put here into us, also saying how important it is for you to discuss with us and to teach what happened. Because we ask ourselves, and you mentioned what you called Holocaust fatigue, we ask ourselves how we can best convey the lessons from this past and the lessons from what we've done to the younger generations. And I mean, you mentioned that you write books for kids.
I met many German youth, many students from all the Mecklenburg. Yeah. From all the state Mecklenburg during 15 years, 16 actually, 16 years. So I had every year at least one or two groups, and also from Slovakia. I could speak Polish with them because this is a very similar language. But what was important, that I am standing as a Jew opposite German youth, and I have to tell my story, which is very difficult. But I did it, and I said, because I think that they should know the truth. The German youth must know the truth. And that's, I did it 16 years in Ravensbrück. I met some international groups in Auschwitz when I came to, it was 70 years of liberation. You were there too. Yeah. Yeah, so...
yeah, we slept a long way together.
Yeah.
And we are,
Yeah.
we really try to work on new ways how to convey this memory, this message, and this kind of lesson also to...
I think that the youth in Germany should know the truth.
Yeah.
They should know that the Nazi Germany was, I could say, an enemy to people. The Nazi Germany condemned all those who didn't go with them. So they were, you know, I was a maid in a Nazi house. So I heard what they think and what they feel. And they listened, they were intelligent people, and they followed Hitler. Because the education went in this direction. That you have Gehorsam. This is a word which, you know, you should be obedient, Gehorsam. It was a typical German concept during the Nazi time. And when I was arrested, they said, it is not possible that she is Jewish. She is so nice and so clean. The concepts that Jews must be dirty and the opposite of nice. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this and conveying this, because this is really something what we are working on. That I think we are partners in this shared endeavor to pass on what you just told me.
No, well, I was an intruder. I intruded the Nazi Germany. Then I was Jewish. What a sin to be Jewish and to live there and to eat German bread. I received, you know, a piece of bread, that's sin, between my fingers, because they didn't have enough, and they gave me some. So, you know, I lived in Nazismus too, because I was in a Nazi house.
Well, thank you very much, Batsheva, for your witness, for
Who?
your testimony. It's me.
You wanted?
No, I wanted to thank you.
Ah,
I wanted to thank you for sharing with all of us your story. What you told us today is reinforcing our determination to remember and to the possible extent understand and make sure that these things will not happen again, and they will fight any form of discrimination, xenophobia, and particularly anti-Semitism.
yeah.
And the fact that you choose to tell the story to the world and you found a way of reaching out to children is so important. You have to be proud of yourself, because this is an incredible contribution that you've given to the fight against intolerance for future generations. So thank you very much. Toda rabba.
Well, thank you.
for a coffee and we can go
Oh.
outside.
Sure.
Yes, these are my children.
כן.
These are my children.
אני אקום. כן, אתם באים. תודה רבה. תודה רבה, יונאו. אני לתת לך את זה גם. תודה.
Drawing for you.
כן, ככה. תודה. תודה לכם. אני נותנת לכם נשיקה באוויר. כן. תודה רבה. תודה. Yeah, it's very
For you and then we'll...
yeah.
Recognize you with the mask. Sorry. I heard your name.